Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I am very proud to welcome Paul Elam back to the show. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
I am glad to be here, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. For those who may not be familiar with you and your work, would you be so kind as to give a brief introduction?
Well, for about the past 20 to 30 years, I've been working in the area of men's issues. It started out with my work in chemical dependency counseling, and then I discovered Warren Farrell's work, and that changed my worldview. And ever since that moment, I have worked with men. I've tried to address as best as I can their issues. I've founded a few things, avoiceformen.com. I founded in 2009. That became the pretty much undisputed flagship for the men's rights movement, and it is still up and running today. And then in 2014, I founded the International Conference on Men's Issues. That is still running, mostly annually. It's been on 4 continents now. And then shortly after that, or during that time, I got the attention of Cassie J, a filmmaker from California, who wanted to do a study of the work I and other MRAs were doing, and ended up making the Red Pill movie, which I think quite a few people have heard about by now. But that pretty much sums it up. Right now, I run XY Crew, which is a men's support network of men across the world where we sit and have discussions about life. We don't pass Kleenex around and have a good cry together, at least not most of the time. But we talk about problems and mostly talk about solutions. And that's been going for the past 6 years and going strong.
Awesome. And I also heard a dirty rumor that you have something new coming up, but we'll go ahead and lead into that a little bit later in the podcast.
Okay.
So that's something for people to look forward to. So just to go ahead and get us started on this conversation about gynocentrism in the church, one of your friends went ahead and shared with me some of your words on this very matter, and I figured I'd go ahead and get us started with that. So you said, it becomes abundantly clear that Christ's love for the church wasn't romantic. Christ didn't send the church flowers. He didn't take it on lavish vacations or whisper sweet nothings in the church's ear. He didn't kneel before the church offering jewels. Indeed, he never tried to impress the church in any way. He never responded to a problem in the church with the pathetic surrender of, yes, dear. It was often quite the opposite.
And as we see in scripture, it was quite the opposite. The first image that comes to my mind is Christ turning over tables and bringing out whipcords in the temple to the money changers. There's the condemnation of church practices we find in Revelation. And really throughout Christ's life, he was a critic of the church. And I think we've almost failed to learn from that, looking at the state of the church now.
That's interesting that you bring up Revelation, because that's something that very few people bring up. Is in Revelation 2 and 3, Jesus is asking the angels to send letters to 7 churches in Asia about specific concerns. And for 5 of the 7, he has very solid condemnations to them, and he's issuing correction to them and a demand for them to bring themselves back into the fold.
Absolutely. And so when people say, and I hear in the modern church a lot, a sort of common retort with marital struggles is an admonishment to the man. You are to love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Well, if you are to love your wife the way Christ loved the church, it's going to be corrective sometimes. Supportive, yes. Loving, yes. Christ was all about love, but it wasn't a sort of mealy-mouthed, pathetic, simping kind of love that often gets expressed today. You mentioned, you quoted me there, and what I want to point out is that all these sort of metaphors I was using about Christ's relationship with the church all go back to romance. And C.S. Lewis wrote about this back in the day, expressing concern that Christian love was being replaced with romantic love. And as I go into the church, I've had an awful struggle. I tell you, I really want to find a church to belong to. But what I see when I go to church is a romantic ethic with women not fulfilling their biblical roles in the church, doing quite the opposite in many cases. I have been in churches where they've introduced me to the church secretary as the woman who really runs things around here, as though there are really no men in leadership. And that sort of attitude is souring. I think it's one of the reasons that people are leaving the church in droves.
Right. Absolutely. It's interesting. We had a question from the audience, a friend of the channel, Michael Sayan, and he asks, if Christ disciplines the church, should we discipline our wife? And what would that look like? Was the church wrong in the past? And are we right? I would go ahead and say that based on what we have talked about already, that correction is an essential part of the marriage relationship. Because here's the thing, just like we as men require correction from other men who can go ahead and see us for what we are doing and let us know when we're straying off the path and bring us into correction, it is our responsibility as husbands to love our wife and to issue correction when it is needed.
Absolutely. I agree with that entirely. I think part of the concern here is that you've got to define discipline.
Right.
Are we to discipline our wives? Yes. I think with rejection of inappropriate behavior, with condemnation of it, with counsel to them for it. Do I think men should slap their wives around because they misbehave? No. I don't think that's discipline. I think it's a lack of self-discipline. And I think part of the integral part of this is that, as you said, men require correction. And importantly, the leader of a household requires self-correction. You have to be able to examine yourself, know when you're out of line, and correct behavior too. This is not a prescription for hypocrisy in the home of, here, you're here to do what I tell you, behave like I want you to, but I don't have any limits on me. I don't go for that model at all.
Right. I mean, we as men have so much responsibility that is put on our backs by society, but we also have substantial responsibility in our homes and to our Lord and Savior. And so the thing is, when we need to hold ourselves accountable, it's also wise for us to go ahead and seek wise counsel, because there are other men that have dealt with situations like we have that we can go ahead and be in relationship and in communion with, to speak to them on these matters and say, look, brother, this is my situation. Where do you see me going wrong in this, or am I on the right track?
Absolutely. I think that's essentially part of what happens at XY Crew. Men come, they present issues they may be having in a marriage or relationship, and the guys give them wise counsel for that. Up to them whether or not they want to take it, but it is provided. And that's always been an essential part of the world of men. We've had historically elders and older members of the community that people sought wisdom for these matters, man to man, and then could bring that into the home. But I think we've lost that in a lot of ways. This society has divided men against each other in ways that have turned out to be incredibly unhelpful for marriage and for the lives of men.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how for men, generally speaking, reality often serves as our accountability in a lot of ways, because the world does not owe us anything. And we typically have to get the things that we get in life from the dirt and from the environment around us. And it isn't a matter of, hey, we should go ahead and be seeking additional accountability. Absolutely, we should. But there are natural mechanisms that work for men that maybe do not work as well or as straightforwardly for women in our current society, based on how much additional padding they get from the society as a whole.
Yeah, and I think it's true in the reverse too. The victim narrative does not work for men. One of the worst things I see happening now, because of father absence and a lot of the anti-male bias in society, is men that are shamed and condemned constantly. It doesn't work. What we're doing doesn't work. And this happens in the church just like it does everywhere else. We have to remember that church congregations are people in the community. They draw from the community, and the community right now is incredibly hostile toward men. And it gets practice from the pulpit. I think it's been said for a while, the safest thing that any pastor can do from the pulpit is condemn men and shake his finger at them. The women will sit there and silently applaud. The men will say, yeah, we're terrible. We need to fix this. But what works for women, the victim narrative, doesn't work for men. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that there's so much there when we go ahead and look at the average pulpit minister and how they are so loud and proud to condemn men. But almost every single time there is any hint of a condemnation for women, they're very quick to whisper the condemnation to women and then immediately afterwards scream from the rooftops about condemnation for men right afterwards. They can't let the women feel anything.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. I was talking to a friend recently. A couple of years ago, his wife left him. They got divorced legally. She has started a new relationship, talking about getting married, dating guys, whatever, has moved on with their life. He went to the talk to the church about that, to the pastor, and within 5 minutes, he was getting instruction of why the whole situation was his fault. It was all his problem, and that he needed to deny, because he wants to have children. He wants to move on with his life and find a wife that's suitable for childbearing. And they told him not to do it, that he had basically had to sit and wait forever for this woman to come back to him. Is it any wonder that we're losing people in the church with this kind of attitude? And I know we can have philosophical debates about what divorce is and when it should happen. There's scripture that addresses that. There's a lot of theology that addresses that. But this automatic, it's your fault no matter what she did, and you're the one that has to suffer, not her. And I think it's all about the money, Mike. When it comes down to it, if you offend the women in a congregation, if you hold them accountable, if you hold up the scriptural prescription for their behavior and compare it to what they're actually doing in a way that's not flattering, they're going to leave. That's what happens. And so the clergy just surrenders to this and chastises men and basically sends women the message that you're saints for even putting up with these slobs. It's a wrong direction.
Yeah, it's interesting because that isn't how it's been historically. So when you talk about the presumption of male fault in the church, whenever an issue arises, I think that's a relatively modern phenomena since the 60s. So in the 60s, you started to see NGO money start filling into the church to go ahead and have what they used to call clergy training. And so at the various seminaries, they would start teaching something called the Duluth model. I think you might be familiar with that.
I'm quite familiar with it.
Right. And so the fundamental understanding is that only men can be aggressors in a domestic violence, kind of situation. And then that thought process extended further to other forms of abuse, right? Though they may not actually be abuse. They may just be the woman's feelings got hurt and now she goes ahead and claims a form of abuse.
Well, what I would say is I agree with what you said, but I think it actually starts much earlier than that. I want to go back. I mean, we talk a lot in my community about gynocentrism. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I plan on doing is trying to talk a lot less about gynocentrism and more about the romantic ethos. Mm-hmm. In the 12th century was the first time the romantic ethos was introduced in human society. For all the years before that, romance essentially, sexual obsession happened, infatuation happened, but this whole romantic ethic didn't exist until the 12th century. And it took it a long time to take root. But part of that ethic that's pulled from Arthurian legend is that moral purity flows through women. Mm-hmm. They are elevated in importance and significance above the worth of men, and it is on men in the romantic model to earn their approval. And we tend to forget the idea that in the beginning, according to Arthurian legend, this was adulterous love. It was not a marriage and family oriented, but it was this code adopted from the military ethic of chivalry that placed men as vassals before women on their knees, looking for acceptance, bearing gifts, bearing jewels. And that never happened in any of our culture until the 12th century. Now that becomes manifest, and it really started in earnest, I think, in probably 1850s is when Peter Wright does a lot of research on this, and he has found all this stuff about gynocentrism and the romantic ethic and the elevation of women coming from foreign observers in the United States in the mid-1800s and beyond. And it has progressively worsened. We ended up with 1950s romantic movies displaying this ethic. Now it's in all the cartoons. It's all the stuff that kids consume, this romantic ethic of placing women above you in value, which is totally against the biblical hierarchy. It has nothing to do with what's actually prescribed biblically, but it's what our society has adopted. And you see this play out in churches with people introducing their wives as their better halves or the commander in chief or something more significant than them. And I think that's at the core of the problem here, is that if we're ever going to get past this, we need a better way, a more actual, when people say, I believe in traditional relationships, my question is, which tradition? From the 1950s or from throughout human history before that?
Sure.
I want to go with the previous tradition that women are to bring material value. Read Proverbs 31. Women have to bring substantive value. They have to bring labor and work. But what we see now in a lot of people who are promoting so-called traditional relationships, they're looking for a trophy wife. And they're looking for somebody who doesn't have to work. Even Charlie Kirk, who I admired very much. I mean, don't get me wrong. But one of the things he said is that a man should absolutely have nothing for himself until his wife has no worries in the world about anything at all.
That's crazy to me. Absolutely nuts.
Yes, it is this sort of self-sacrificing, servile approach to pair bonding with women. And that is the Western standard today. This is what you see from men, and it's a crying shame.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up the 1850s, because that's around the time that the Rockefellers started heavily investing in the feminist movement. And the Rockefellers went ahead and they financed, I don't know if you know this lady's name, but Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Yes.
Where she went ahead and developed a Bible commentary called the Women's Bible. And it's just replete with feminist nonsense. If you were to go ahead and take a look at the Women's Bible and put it up against scripture, it's insane. The crazy stuff that we see in the modern day that stemmed from that. A lot of the assumptions that go into how people read scripture, like the ideas of mutual submission and happy wife, happy life, the progenitors of those doctrines and those mores went ahead and showed up in 1850 in that Bible commentary.
And it's a perfect corollary with the emergence of the romantic ethic, because of course we're not allowed, I'd say we're not allowed facetiously. We're challenging it all the time. People don't like it. They don't want to listen, but we're not allowed to challenge this because of this idea that moral purity actually flows through women. You can't criticize women. You can't criticize the feminist Bible that Stanton came up with. If you do that, you must be a misogynist. You must be hateful. And men have fallen silent in that. It's absolutely amazing to me how quickly that this model had them surrendering their power in relationships. And then we say, gee, people aren't getting married anymore. The divorce rate is sky high. How did all this stuff happen? Well, it must be men.
Sure. Yeah, never mind no fault divorce. Never mind women are the ones petitioning for divorce. Never mind a lot of these simp pastors that are helping the divorce happen in the first place rather than counseling them to honor their commitments, right? Never mind any of this happening to poison the well in the first place.
Yeah, I was on a podcast once with Andrew Wilson, and this topic came up about the gynocentrism, all this, the women having all this power and what's happening in the church. And he said, well, that's just Protestant churches. No,
I can happening tell in the Catholic Church and in the Orthodox Church to a much lesser degree.
I can tell you that I have counseled men who attend Catholic, who are good Catholics, who were married. The wife came in and shed a couple of tears for the congregation and says, he doesn't treat me right. And they all turned on him right there in the Catholic Church, including the clergy. It's everywhere. There is nobody exempt. And that's not a shot at Catholics. I mean, I'm sure I'll meet plenty of Catholics in heaven, and I'm sure of that. But it is pervasive. This goes throughout our church, the church altogether, and throughout our culture. Because as I said, our churches are just a reflection of the people of the community.
Sure. I mean, it's a concerted effort to weaken the influence of the church and to reduce the power of men and to hand a lot of that power over to, for lack of better, to Satan in a lot of ways.
I've heard it referred to as the Jezebel spirit. And I think that's accurate. It is satanic. I mean, the modern church now is falling to the same thing that took David down, the same thing that took Solomon down, the same thing that took Samson down.
Mm-hmm. Foreign wives and the gods of others of their foreign wives, their gods were the ones that led them astray rather than being faithful.
Well, I think that the subtext to that is that they actually made gods of women.
Sure, I think that's a reasonable thing to extend from that.
Yeah, but they followed other gods because they were actually worshiping the women.
Yeah, which is interesting because when you see a man leading his family courageously, you are much more likely to see the woman fall in line with her husband's directives, which is very interesting. But a lot of these men are getting henpecked left and right, and they're just letting intimacy be used as a carrot and a stick in their life because they're being led around by the nose all over the place and other parts.
And they will hear from other men in the church that this is what Christ wants you to do. I've seen so many men that were absolutely being destroyed in a contentious divorce, false allegations, the whole 9 yards, and seen men in the church come around them and just say, take it.
Which is the weirdest thing, because when you go ahead and look at how many of them got to be picked in the first place, many of the men were actually men at the beginning of the marriage. And the woman would go ahead and reduce the man little by little by asking him to concede more and more of himself to her. And it is in that series of concessions that he weakens himself and elevates her. And in that process, she loses respect for him.
Of course. And then he wonders, why doesn't she respect me? Well, you didn't have boundaries. You didn't know how to say no. You didn't apply your values to everything in your marriage and insist on that's the standard, not what makes her happy or what makes you happy, but what's your responsibility here? What are you supposed to be doing? What's right for a family and a marriage? And if it means telling her no, that's what it means.
Well, it's really interesting how a lot of times people nowadays want to put feelings as a target. I can't control how my wife feels about anything. Like, I don't know if you've had this kind of experience, but I've certainly never had this experience where I can control what my wife feels about a given thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I can communicate things in a certain way because I know her and I know her proclivities, right? And that she is more willing to take something at face value or not. But I have no actual control about how she feels in a given moment. So because of that, I cannot bear responsibility to that feeling.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that does point us right back to the romantic ethic, because what happened where marriage used to be about your responsibilities to children, your responsibilities to the community, to the two families that were
Mhm.
connected in marriage, your responsibilities to God, those were the things that formed the marriage. And then with the romantic ethic, it became responsibility to the woman's feelings. She
Mhm.
has to feel good at all time. And that's how we got from, well, I felt good when we got married, but now I don't feel so good anymore. So the marriage is a failure. So if
Iro-
her,
Ironically enough, when you're a man and you do go back to the ideals of thinking what's best for the family and what's best for your service to God and everybody involved, not just one person's feelings, but everybody that is a stakeholder in the relationship, it tends to go better.
it tends to go better and it tends to go away from your mood at any particular time. I mean, that becomes irrelevant when the priorities are straight. But again, we've lost those priorities. We have become a nation of simps that are ever trying to, I mean, we've made movies, what women want. This whole obsession with making women happen and caring about what they want at any particular time, even materially, um, it's gotten quite insane, in my opinion. We're suffering for it too. The children are suffering for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk a lot in terms of theory, right? And sometimes people will come and ask us for practical insights, right? So there's a good question earlier on by Michael Sand where he says, we used to cut up our wives' credit cards. Well, first of all, our wives didn't used to have credit cards. They used to have access to credit accounts back when we had covetry laws, but it's considered financial abuse today. How should we handle our wife's overspending? I actually have a good personal story for this very thing from about 20 years ago. So there was one time where my wife got mad at something that I had done, and she had left the house, and the next day was payday, and she emptied the checking account that next day out of anger. I opened a new bank account that same day and changed my direct deposit to the bank account. All the direct deposits go to that same bank account to this very day. I drew a line and I said, never again. Never again. And when she went ahead and came back, we reconciled, we got things squared away. But that was a line that was not to be crossed ever again because I had responsibilities. And thankfully, I had a close friend that was willing to lend me a couple $100 for a little bit so I can handle essentials until the next pay period. But that was one mistake. Very early, it was first year of marriage kind of problems, and never again. So nowadays, she has a credit card at this point, 21 years later, but she has limited spending limits. She has like monthly, I go ahead and check the statement to see what kind of nonsense or not nonsense has happened. And then we go ahead and address it bit by bit. And then I make adjustments to her credit limit or her spending limit because I'm the one that's responsible for our financial well-being overall. And over the last 21 years, I've led our family to a great deal of financial success because I was willing to hold the line and because I'm willing to take a long-term perspective on things. What are your thoughts on the matter, Paul?
Uh, my thoughts probably won't be incredibly popular with a lot of Christians, but
Okay, fair enough.
I'm going to give it anyway. My take on it is financial separation,
Okay.
financial accountability on both ends. I have my money, she has hers. We
Mhm.
we contribute equally in our home to expenses, but I don't have a single credit card with her name on it, and vice versa. I'm fine with that arrangement. It is not quote unquote traditional in a lot of senses, but the idea now in 2026 of commingling finances with a woman, I just won't do it. I get
Mhm.
guys who do, they want a different model of a relationship. I'm not criticizing them for it, but it's absolutely, and I recommend this to my clients, don't commingle assets. Then you don't have to worry about it. Plus, if your wife has an expectation that she contributes material value
Mhm.
to the marriage, which I think is biblical, then
Sure.
it sets up a framework that can work. And since I'm the only one with access to my bank accounts, I never have to worry about it. Not that she would do it. I think another part of this, and look, I'm as guilty as the next guy. I'm twice married, been there, done that, made all the mistakes. But what I have found in my own life personally is that with women I had financial problems with, I was not adequately screening. I was not testing their character regularly for a prolonged period of time before I got involved with them. So I think there's something to be said for that too. But like I said, it doesn't put me on the same page with a lot of people, but that's how I've chosen to handle it. I'm okay with it. I believe God's okay with it. And that's the way we do it.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable for you to go ahead and have a specific vision for how you handle the affairs of your family. And so long as your wife is on board with it, you're good. She'll agree to the arrangement and things will proceed. If she doesn't agree to the arrangement, you may make different choices. And I think that is well within your right to do so. And I think that though it is out of step with what most people think, I think most people don't do a whole lot of thinking about this in the first place, which is why this ends up being the default. So just like when people have this negative view of what a prenuptial agreement is, I think that people fail to recognize that you have a prenuptial agreement regardless of whether you customize one for your own marriage. You either take the default one from the state that people haven't really looked into, because I'm going to go ahead and guess that the vast majority of men do not look at their family codes for their state, if they're in the United States, to know what that default actually is. Now, there's nothing wrong with a husband and a wife coming together and establishing the rules of engagement so that both sides understand what the expectations are. And most people that have this conversation have to exhibit a certain level of maturity about what is going on in the marriage, in this covenant that you're getting ready to enter into. And so I think that when people are not having this conversation, they are often selling themselves short of having a more mature, well-adjusted vision for what it is you're getting into. What do you think on that?
I agree with you. And I think that since we have a default position, and you're right, it's totally unconscious. Most guys, I tell guys all the time, before you get married, go visit a family attorney, get the lowdown on the laws in your area, understand legally what you're getting into. I also suggest a marriage other than a legal one. But I mean, that's almost a different topic. But I started telling women after a couple of train wrecks that cost me a lot of money, I started telling women, if we're more than 2 ships passing in the night, I'm not going to finance this thing. Yeah, I mean, if we're meeting for a date or two, yeah, fine, I'll spring for it. It's a so-called tradition. I don't have a problem with that. But if we're going to establish something here, then you have to show up with your purse. And I know that I think that threatens some men, because a lot of men want a dependent.
Well, why do you think that is? Like, what's appealing about that?
Boy, I could get in trouble with your audience here.
That's okay. Like, give me your honest opinion. Like, I'm
my honest opinion,
asking you, Paul, about that.
Insecurity.
Okay.
Is what I think. I think that somewhere in men's unconsciousness is that this idea that if she's dependent on me, she can't leave me. She needs me too much. I think it also sets up a parent-child relationship that I don't want with a woman. I want a leadership position, but that's different to me than this parent-child. You're my dependent. I'm going to take care of you. You don't need to worry your pretty little head about anything. I think that's appealing to a lot of guys, not just out of insecurity, but I think it's drilled into us from an early age. Your job is to be the financial pillar for your family. That's just your job. Her job is in the home. I don't think that's biblical, really. If you read Proverbs 31 about the things that wife have to do, it has to do with working outside the home. Even in those times, it talks about money she gets from working her own fields. That is part of the deal. She brings that to the marriage. But I think with the romantic ethos, we've sort of morphed this into, no, you're a dependent child. I'm the daddy. I take care of everything. So it's all my rules. You do what I tell you to. I think it gets into a dynamic that isn't really leadership near as much as it is a kind of slavery and enabling. I hear men all the time complain about their lazy wives. I get that a lot in the sessions I do with it. She doesn't do anything. She sits around and watches TV. She eats in bed. She does all sorts of things that I don't like. And I ask them, well, when you started the relationship, did you lead with your wallet? Did you say, here, no woman's paying for things in my presence. I take care of this. I do that. You don't have to do anything. And then when they adopt that as a mode of operation in the marriage, suddenly the men are pulling their hair out, wondering what happened.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you're describing things and like you didn't know that this about me, but my wife and I, we have, more or less a fairly traditional kind of thing where it's more Proverbs 31-ish in nature, but she doesn't work outside of the home. She works within the curtilage of the home, right? Okay. So she serves as my assistant and she goes ahead and does the things that I need of her. And I give her enumerated tasks that she is to go ahead and to handle on my behalf, right? At my direction.
That is bringing material value. In my opinion, I think you can have that as long as there's an expectation that she brings material value to the marriage. It's the same thing that I do. It's not that much different. Sure. Whether that happens inside the home or outside, I just think realistically, it's been 50 years since most households could run on one income.
It was very difficult when we first got started.
It's a real challenge, and if guys can pull it off, I'm like, more power to you. But what I'm really talking about is this sort of romantic model where there's a princess at home who will get bruised if you put a pea under her mattress, and she shouldn't be expected to do a lot of labor. Historically, women worked like dogs to provide for families, to provide what they needed. We have to remember, you used to have to walk a mile to a well or to a creek to even get water for your home. Women had to contribute to all of that. Now it's, 1950s Hollywood. No, she just sort of sits there and looks pretty. Guys that want that, it's their right. I don't want to question them for that, but I don't think it's a good functional model for a relationship anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember it was very difficult. Our first couple of years of marriage, because when we got married, I had joined the Air Force right afterwards, and we were one income household the whole way. And so it was really funny one time when I got a promotion, and the way that I had typically run my finances was anytime I would get a raise, I would go ahead and increase my savings by half of the amount of the raise, and then our lifestyle could take a bump for the other half of the raise. And so there was at one point where instead of getting like sliced like Kraft cheese, we got actual cheddar cheese. And my wife was so happy. She's like, we're having real cheese now. This is great.
Not the cheese-like product that comes in little wrappers.
Yeah, not cheese-like food substance. And then like we moved up from bologna to like roast beef. And so like it was just those little things where we were just really careful with our funds, which is how we got to do the things that we did. And she had grown up in a single family household where her mom basically gave her everything she ever wanted. And it was really funny. The first time I needed to buy a computer for something, I was talking about going and buying a used one. And she looked at me incredulously. She's like, wait, what do you mean used? And I'm like, wait, hold up. You don't understand that products can be used and then sold for a fraction of what they bought it for new? And she's like, I had no idea that was a thing. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just buy somebody's computer that they used for 2 years, pay half as much as they paid for it, and it's perfectly usable for me for 5 years.
Just think cars. They do the same thing there.
Yeah. I've never bought a new car. Even though I have the means to go ahead and buy whatever car I want, basically, at this point, I still buy used vehicles because I don't want to deal with that depreciation.
You mean that 20% loss the moment you sign the contract? Yeah, I don't deal with that either. I have never bought a new car in my life. I bought several that were a year or two old. Great cars, served me well, and for a lot less money. Your mic is gone.
How about now? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, you're good.
So I told my wife that the only time I would go ahead and buy a new vehicle is if 1 month's passive income from my investments could pay for it in cash outright. We're not quite there yet. It'll be maybe a few years down the road, but maybe by the time I'm 49 or 50, I could go ahead and do it. But it's pretty good.
And eventually, I'm 69 and I'm still not willing to do it. I could do it, but I just won't make myself. It just seems like a waste. And I think that's honestly a sign of good leadership in the home. You're thinking about what's important, not your ego.
Sure, because why would I go ahead and buy something to impress people that I don't care about and who don't care about me? Like status for those things are just meaningless. They're vanity if we were to go ahead and take the Ecclesiastes route.
Well, and this is exactly some of the issues I have with what's happening in what I call the modern manosphere, as opposed to what the manosphere was like 20 years ago, is this pursuit of status in order to attract more women, which is essentially what this is about. But I have to ask people sometimes, well, if you're leading with your wallet, if you're trying to attract with here, I've got all this, so you can live this cushy, wonderful life, and you can ride around in my Maserati with me and enjoy yourself. What kind of woman does that attract?
You know, this is a really good time to go ahead and pitch your new podcast. This sounds like the same kind of thing that you generally have as a criticism for most other people in the manosphere. Do you want to go ahead and pitch your new podcast at this point?
Sure. It's called Repairing the Manosphere because I think it's broken. It's going to be a program. It should be starting in the next month, I would say at the latest. We're nearly there with getting things ready. But the idea of it is that the red pill, the manosphere, has morphed into being about pickup artistry and game and manipulation, manipulative tactics with people, dark triad stuff, a lot of it, and bodybuilding, just lift bro. But it's all this, the original red pill, at least in my corner of the manosphere, was about male autonomy and independence, whether you got married, didn't get married, but carving your own path out in life, and self-value. Valuing what you do, valuing your very existence, the same way God does, and to treat yourself with that kind of respect. But what's happened, it's been kind of co-opted by a lot of guys that are just chasing skirts. That is just, it goes back to the fundamental gynocentrism and romantic ethos that was the problem to begin with. And I think what they're doing is they're screening for dysfunction. They are filtering out stable people. There's basically 3 different attachment styles. There's secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and anxious attachment. And it's filtering out secure attachment for the wrong kind of people, for gold diggers, for this sort of thing. And I mean, that's what you do. If you drive a Maserati to impress women, guess what? The type of women you're going to impress. And you'll get what you paid for with that. So the idea of the program is to have a different discussion about what's valuable in men's life, what's important to them, what actually serves their lives long term. Because, you know, I get it, when you're 22, pickup artistry is like, wow, this is great. I can have sex with multiple women. I can attract beautiful women into my life and manipulate them into bed with me. At 22, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I get it. I was that way. That's where my priorities were. When you're 42, your priorities are different. And when you're 52, they're different still. If you think in the term of the arc of a man's life, the whole time he's on a planet, the things you thought were important at 22 are the things that destroy you at 62. And that's what the discussion is going to be about. There's going to involve some critique of the manosphere, but also a lot of critique of the romantic model itself. There are better ways to pair bond with women than using infatuation and sexual energy as the basis for your relationship that you allegedly would like to last a lifetime. There's much better ways to do it. People used to think, and they were right, that the idea of marrying somebody based on sexual infatuation, terrible idea. Only a crazy person would do that, and people knew it. Now it's the standard. Oh, we've got this wonderful flood of oxytocin in the brain, and we feel wonderful, and she can't do anything wrong, and he's the perfect guy. I can't believe I was so lucky I met this perfect guy. And of course, we all know that that does not last forever. But basing a marriage and having children on that fleeting feeling and then trying to perpetuate it for 20, 30, 40 years, that's an insane model.
Sure.
I don't think it works.
Yeah, I don't think it works either. I think it's interesting because if we go ahead and look at Greek words for love, you're expressing eros, like the sexual infatuation. Now, in the Bible, it's only used in one context, and it is used in the book of Proverbs, and it's talking about an adulterous woman in that case.
Yes.
Right? In every other example, the word is agape or phileo or something of that nature, where it is not. It is about growing together for mutual benefit, not sexual satisfaction. Now, let me see. I think some people might misunderstand you when you go ahead and say the things as forcefully as you say against the current iteration of the manosphere. You're not saying that working out in and of itself is bad. You're not saying that getting social skills is bad. You're saying that it's a matter of focus. Where are you directing your efforts and for what purpose?
Absolutely. Working out's great. I work out. I love working out. Well, I don't love it every time, but I get it done. It's an important thing to do. Having social skills is an important thing to do. But let's be honest. When it comes to the PUA ethos, this isn't about social skills. It's about manipulative techniques like tossing negs, putting her off. One prominent figure in the manosphere talks about flirting with other women in front of his wife in order to create a little bit of dread. And this is really Machiavellian stuff to me. That's not social skills. It's actually trying to manipulate, say a person, and many do, has abandonment issues from childhood. Say the father was pushed out of the home and they missed out on that. And they feel a hole in their being because of that, because of the removal of the father. Well, the PUA plays on that. So let me manipulate your sense of abandonment so you'll get anxious and attached to me. That's not a social skill in my book. That's evil.
Sure. And there's delineations for what having a pleasant conversation with somebody is a skill that many men lack because they haven't been instructed on how to do this properly. And I think that in a lot of ways, PUAs teach skills that are manipulative. But if you were to go ahead and take the manipulative side of it and look at just the ability to socialize properly with members of the same sex and members of the opposite sex, I think there's a lot of value in doing that.
When guys ask me about that, about socially interacting with women, what I suggest to them is pretend in your head that they're men. What would you say to a guy? Usually men don't have that much of a problem striking up conversations with each other, talking about sports or whatever their interests are. It doesn't have to be ultra masculine stuff. A lot of guys like other things. They talk about them. But when men get in the presence of women, the first thing they do is go into a performance mode. That's not a social skill either.
Right.
That's a song and dance routine. So I try to suggest to men that, if you just talk to women like they're people, and if you hold the standards with women that you hold with men, we don't tolerate disrespect from men. We don't tolerate cutting remarks and snideness from men. But yet when women do it, that's just the way they are. You just have to do it. And a lot of these just so arguments of this is just the way it is. These aren't, to me, social skills. Social skills you practice with men. And if you talk to women the same way, reasonably, intelligently, about stuff that's interesting to you and listen to what's interesting to them, then you have the opportunity for social skills practice that you never get if you're being performative.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because a lot of these things that the manosphere talks about, if you are honestly approaching them for the sake of accomplishing a transcendent cause or some kind of mission, you would naturally have and derive many of the benefits that they talk about when they're centering the conversation about being performative for women's sake. Like, for example, if you are incredibly successful in a line of endeavor and you're able to like work your way around a room and socialize and garner the attention and the respect of men in the room, it is very likely that you're going to get the attention of women in the room too, by a byproduct of the attention from the men.
I would say that is more effective in many ways. If your intent is to attract women, and I'm not criticizing guys that want to do that, but if your intent is to attract women, I think you get more play out of working the room of men than you do working the room of women. You go through the women in the room, it's obvious what you're doing. You're trying to talk to one woman after another. If you just be you,
right,
interact with the guys, that I think enhances chances. But I think the mistake is looking at this as a byproduct. If it's like the guys going to the gym, I think we discussed this last time. If a lot of the just lift bro crowd says, well, you do the gym for yourself, but the women are a byproduct. I guarantee you 98% of those guys, if women weren't the byproduct, they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. So the question is whether the carrot or the stick is leading in that equation, right?
And whether or not it's a byproduct, because
sure,
if you won't do it without the byproduct, then it becomes the product. It's not the byproduct. Yeah. The byproduct then is you get healthier.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I go ahead and I lift and I do these things for myself primarily, but I go ahead and have the tangential benefit of everything else that comes with that, right? It helps me to center myself in ways that few other activities do, right? I can go ahead and lay out the tasks that are set before me. I can go ahead and set myself in the mode of developing myself for development's sake, right? Because oftentimes I spend most of my day either reading or solving problems and other things of that nature, because I've got a couple of businesses. And so I have responsibilities that I have to attend to on a regular basis. But working out is often something that helps me to tackle the day.
And it's a great thing. But I think it also should be said, you're in a long-term marriage.
I am.
You're not working out so that your wife will think you're attractive.
It certainly helps. I'll tell you what.
It does. It does help, but that's not the purpose for most guys in long-term marriages. They're just working on their health because it does. It clarifies the mind. It helps you accomplish tasks more. I mean, the benefits are just amazing to it. But I think what I'm really talking about is the sort of manosphere contingent of just lift, bro. The girls will come. Mm-hmm. It's not like it makes working out unhealthy. It's still good for you. But I think there's something in the mindset there that men would benefit by correcting.
Sure. I think I bring that up more to talk about, the idea of passive dread, where I don't think it's intentional. It doesn't have to be manipulative, right? Being somebody that other people want to be like and other people want to be with has its benefits. And whether you entertain that or not is a man's prerogative and a man's decision. I don't think that he should, but there are certain benefits that intrinsically come from being in that position in the first place.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
So going back to the idea of gynocentrism in the church, we talked a little bit about how the church pedestalizes women. Now, there's a couple of gynocentric frameworks that I think are really common in the church. One of them is happy wife, happy life. I'm sure you've heard of that.
A million times.
And servant leadership. Is there one of the topics of the two that you would prefer to hit on first?
Well, I mean, they're both tied together. I'd say we just tackle both of them, right? I mean, the happy wife, happy life. This is the same thing as saying when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Mm-hmm. We've all heard that expression 1,000 times too. And what that is an implied threat. Mm-hmm. It is a threat to the man. If you don't make her happy, she will make you and everybody in the family miserable. That's what that statement is saying. Happy wife, happy life is no different. It is saying that unless you make her happy, as though happiness is not her inside job, as though she's not responsible for her happiness, you are. If you don't make that happen, then you're going to suffer and you're going to be an unhappy person. That's life under a threat. And that's the romantic ethos. Now, what was the other part of that? I forget. There was two parts of this: happy wife, happy life, and servant leadership.
Servant leadership.
Yes. Well, that's where I think especially everybody has really dropped the ball on what that means.
Right.
Christ was a servant leader, and we are called to be servant leaders. We are not called to live on our knees before mm-hmm. women. That is, and to interpret that is, you're just supposed to take whatever she dishes out, happy wife, happy life, as we say. And if you respond as Christ wants you to, you just sort of absorbed all that, you take it and put up with it, and you continue to serve. It is, to me, a gross distortion of what Christ actually lived like. He walked around challenging everything all the time. He challenged the prejudices of the time. He challenged people's behavior. He challenged the church. He challenged the whole world, and they killed him for it.
Right.
So it's like, wait a minute. Did you forget about that part of Christ's life when you talk about being a servant leader? Because what I'm hearing from a lot of guys in the church is that you take whatever she dishes out. Christ was a servant leader, and your job is to serve and to take care of her and to let this stuff roll off your back like water.
Yeah, and that is absolutely crazy. It is insane for guys to go ahead and let those words leave their mouth because they fundamentally disregard the fact that Christ does ask or tell the church to come back into compliance when it goes astray.
He said, I spit you out of my mouth.
Yeah. Man,
it's like,
there are so many very specific things that Christ issues to the 5 churches that he had rebukes for. Now, can we go ahead? We're going to put a pin in this because I've got to go ahead and celebrate something, right? So Mountain Man Tops with the $4.99. First of all, this is my first super chat ever on my channel. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. It has been a while.
Wow.
I had these 11 months working up this YouTube channel, and I really appreciate the support and the love that you guys have given to me. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and read this chat. Mountain Man Top says, it's okay for one of the reasons to self-improve, also being more attractive to women. Absolutely agree. Totally agree. Now,
I don't argue with that either.
No argument there. My issue, and I think that Paul is on the same sheet of music, is if we go ahead and have that be the guiding force for it, that's where we kind of get led astray. And I think it's better for us to work out for our own benefit and for the women to come alongside as a tangential benefit to our efforts.
I think it's really simple, and I agree with this commenter, and I want to thank him for supporting your channel too. Good show. But if you would not do it, were it not for the possibility of attracting women, then it's not one of the reasons. It's the reason. And I think that difference in mentality tells you about the man, what his priorities actually are, whether or not he's living by values, whether or not he values his health, or does he say, well, if I get buff, then I'll be a chick magnet. There's a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference.
And these guys that are ever pursuing women, they're ever skirt chasers. What I found in life through personal experience is they're not to be trusted. Mm-hmm. These are guys that will throw you under the bus the moment a skirt comes along, just for the sake of doing it. And so I urge caution with men whose sole purpose in life is to be as attractive as possible to women and to attract as many women as possible. But I agree with your commenter. There's nothing wrong with that being one of the reasons.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because I find that it is easier to trust men that have less issues with women, generally speaking, because typically they have other things going on in their life for that to be a qualifier for them in the first place.
Yes.
Right? And then I've got another super chat here. When it rains and pours. Thank you so much, Michael saying, I appreciate it. And, I just appreciate the love and support that you guys have given to me. And I mean, big thanks to Paul Elam and other gentlemen that have seen the value of what I have to say and the work that I'm putting in. And I just really appreciate the forebears that have come before me, that I can stand on their shoulders to look just a little bit higher and to contribute in my own special way. Thank you so much.
Way to go, Michael.
All right. So we were talking about servant leadership and happy wife, happy life. And you had mentioned very clearly how it's important not to give up everything to her emotions. And that's kind of what happy life, wife does, is it puts her emotions as sovereign over everything else. And this leads very much into other things that you brought up earlier in this conversation, where a lot of times the church just tells men, just do whatever it takes for her to be happy. It's a moving target. That's insane.
Yes. And anybody that has tried to do that, to take on the responsibility for another human being's happiness, and I'm going to say it, especially a woman's happiness, the vacillating moods, the I want one thing 1 minute and I get it, then I don't want it and I want something else. Trying to keep up with that is a fool's errand. Mm-hmm. I see guys trying to do it all the time. They're like, well, what does she want now? And they're like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. No, it's not. You're not supposed to govern a family by the fleeting and vacillating emotional state of one member of the family. Doing that is a fool's errand, and it will not work out for you. You'll try and get frustrated, and then you'll end up pulling your hair out and saying things like, how many men have you heard to say, I just want to pull my hair out because I can't figure out what it takes to make that woman happy. Nothing works. Nothing makes her happy. Well, duh. She's not happy. And it's her job to fix that, not yours.
Yeah, because you can't bear that responsibility. It's really interesting because this brings up a story from a couple weeks ago where my wife and I had a disagreement about how to handle something with one of my daughters. She had a health concern that was going on, and I had taken on the information that the doctors had provided, and I did some exterior research, and I said, look, I don't think what the doctor is proposing is the right answer, and I'm going to go ahead and suggest that we go ahead and look at alternative options. And immediately, because the option that was provided was in line with what my wife was thinking of at the time, and so when I expressed concern over it, she immediately got defensive. And I said, look, babe, I have every interest in making sure that our daughter is well cared for and well taken care of, and that we're not just looking at right now, but we're looking at the second and third order effects of what's going to happen. And I would not be exercising my responsibility as her father if I just took the easy way out. So what we're going to do is A, B, and C as opposed to X, Y, and Z. And we'll give it a couple of weeks and we'll take a look at it and we can reapproach it if things don't change substantially. And at first, she didn't like that. And I'm okay with it. I'm okay to stand the storms when things happen. And I just give her time. I go ahead and handle my business because I have other things to be doing. And then later on, she's like, I'm so glad that you have the burden of making these decisions. I'm so happy that you think about these things in a way that I may not be equipped to think about it at the time.
Sounds like being a good husband and father to me.
Right. Oh, we got another super chat. Don
Oh,
DeMarco,
goodness.
happy to be an early super chatter as well. Great talk, y'all. If things ever improved, I might be back at church. Seems that it may take a while, though. I'll tell you what.
Donald, it may indeed.
Hey, Don DeMarco, if you're ever in West Texas, look me up. I'll go ahead and set you up with a place that's a lot more friendly to men. Because I've been battling some stuff in my congregation recently, and we're winning. Because I've got a couple of guys that are standing shoulder to shoulder with me, and we're taking it back.
Very good. I tell you, I wish you could send a little bit of that magic out to Virginia. This is Bible Belt country. You can't throw a rock without hitting a church, and I haven't found one yet that wasn't just a lost cause.
I'm sorry to hear about that, Paul. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because you said it earlier on in the conversation. It is very straightforward what Scripture has to say on what right looks like, what the order of the family is. There is a divine order. It is God, man, woman, children. That's how it is. And it's within the context of a family. It's not that all women are to submit to all men like in Islam. It is right. A wife is to submit to her husband, right? And that should be something that she should be vetting for before she accepts his marriage proposal. Is she willing to obey him? Love, honor, and obey. If she isn't, then maybe that's not a good match for her.
And let me give you an example of that. I'll use my own life and what I consider leadership in my home. It's like I said, we have separate finances. She carries her weight. She does plenty around here. She's not the kind of person, honestly, that has to be told much. She does what she's supposed to do. And that was a product of careful screening on my part. I don't have to instruct her a lot. But what I do in the relationship is I'm the person responsible for maintaining the standard of respect. Mm-hmm. That is my job. I will not tolerate her disrespect, even a little bit of it. There will be an issue if she shows any, and I don't tolerate it from myself. Mm-hmm. I treat her with respect, and when I err, I correct the mistake. When she errs, I correct the mistake. That's my job. The rest sort of falls into place for me. But I think that's how that hierarchy is played out in my relationship, and it may be different for other relationships. Certainly, it's not the only way you can do it. I mean, there are other relationships that require more and different things to be supervised. That's fine. But in mine, the leadership is about we are not going to fight like cats and dogs. We're not going to behave like children in this relationship because I will not tolerate it.
That's great, man. So I think it's interesting that a lot of people in the modern church fail to recognize in Ephesians 5, at the end, it very clearly lays out a man's responsibility to his wife and a wife's responsibility to her husband. The man's responsibility to his wife is to love her. The woman's responsibility to her husband in modern translations is rendered respect him. However, if you go back to the original Greek at the end of Ephesians 5, that word isn't the word for respect. The word is phobos, which is the word that is the root word for phobia, right? But in that context, what phobos means is reverent fear. We are to have fear for God. And so if a woman was to go ahead and treat her husband with reverence, most of the time, men respond in kind with love. I'll tell you what, when my wife submits to my authority, I have a natural inclination to love her more and to care for her more, right? And she has realized that dynamic starting from the 5th year of marriage. Right around year 5, she figured that out, that when she submits to my authority, I take care of her even better because I go ahead and take the time to reward good behavior because I understand that if I continue to provide incentives for the behavior, it will continue. And then it becomes a natural part of her character. And that's what happened is I spent 10 years cultivating that. And so right around year 15, there was no need for me to incentivize it, but I still choose to do what I choose to do to support her obedience.
It's amazing you said that, because that is exactly the same time frame that things worked out for me.
That's interesting.
Exactly. Just as you said, that's how it went down. We've been together 24 years now. And the last 10 especially have been very smooth. There is a natural desire on her part to allow me the authority in the relationship to do what I do, and she benefits from it. She enjoys it and has said it's made her a better person. And she said that with a tear in her eyes a couple of times, that this is what has made her a better person. And having to hold myself to account to the same standards and be accountable to God for the same standards has made me a better person. And it's made the relationship more loving. This is not a power struggle anymore about whose rules we're going to play by. There are the rules, and we are going to play by them, period.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, because when my wife and I got together, we knew that we were making one team and that we were on my plan for us to go ahead and have a legacy, right? I grew up in abject poverty. When we got married, we were negative 50K in debt is basically what the deal was. And I went ahead and took us from that to substantial wealth, to the point where I don't have to work at this point, right? But the thing is, like, it was a grueling process. For most of my later 20s to my early 30s, I was working 100 hours a week, but it was because it was for the attainment of a greater goal and for a transcendent cause that I was doing this. And so it made everything worth it in the end.
It pays. The biblical hierarchy pays. It pays great dividends. The only problem we have right now is getting two people together that have that figured out, or at least are capable of learning it, because men are weak on asserting their authority. They yield to women, they serve them, they play the servant leader as instructed by the church and by the society around them. They don't assert authority at all for the most part, and women don't want to accept authority from a man. It's constant testing and pushing the limits and seeing what he'll tolerate, these childish games that go on, and they sometimes stretch out for 30 years and the couple still gets divorced.
Right.
It's a shame. But I think we're on to what actually works here.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just going back to the original playbook in a lot of ways. And so at this point, I'm somewhat concerned for my own children. I've got a daughter that's 15 and a son that's 14. And my daughter is going to be an exceptional wife. And she's going to come with a dowry. And so the thing is, like, I need to go ahead and make sure that she has got an appropriately yoked husband for her, because I am bringing quality stock to the bargaining table, right? And then my son,
I love that you have a dowry for her. We need to get back to that. That is awesome.
Right, because I recognize that in the modern day, one of the biggest struggles that families have is housing. Housing affordability crisis is a thing that you see all over the newspapers. And if I could go ahead and supply that need to my children, that's one less thing that's going to go ahead and ruin the marriage.
Or you could instead spend $50,000 on a wedding and another 50 on a honeymoon and have it all go away. I think your plan is better.
Yeah, why would I do that? That sounds silly. That's like buying a new car, but worse. The return on investment is crazy low.
Is even less than a new car. Shout out to Shaw on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Shaw. I imagine he's going to see this. So go ahead, timestamp 114. I'll send it to
him. He's single-handedly taken this topic on, and it's an important work.
Yeah, it's great work that he's doing. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I know that for my son, he is going to be in a much better place starting out in life than I was. Like, I married a tall woman, so my son is much taller than I am already, and he's 14. So he's going to be well into the mid sixes by the time he's done growing. And like, he is going to be well equipped in so many ways, and he'll be a lethal weapon in business and hand to hand. He'll have a lot of things that I didn't have, because he's got the benefit of a father that is guiding him along the way that I didn't have.
And isn't that what all good fathers are supposed to do, to set, not to provide a better life, but to set them up for a better life than the father had? I think that's every father's wish. I really do. It's too bad we take the kids away from them the way we do, and disempower their authority in their lives. We're stealing from our children with that in one of the most egregious ways possible.
Yeah. And I think what we can do is help men learn how to vet properly, how to hold frame, how to give them the skills that they need to succeed, so that they can have much better chances to succeed in the world. We can't go ahead and guarantee. Life isn't guaranteed. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. But we can go ahead and set them up with the circumstances where they are much better off than they would be otherwise.
And hopefully prepare young men to have the attitude that they're going to identify their values, they're going to live by their values, whether she stays or goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's a thought to go ahead and kind of close things out a little bit. So are you familiar with Megan Basham's work at all?
No.
Okay, so she had come up with a book recently called Shepherds for Sale. And so the book, the general thrust of the book is that a lot of the things that we see as political issues that are pushed through the church and through tradcons and things like that are often financed through NGOs and often through wealthy donors that want to institute policy. So when they go ahead and donate to the church, they get messages put out to the congregations to get people on board with things that they would not ordinarily be on board with if they were just looking at scripture for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, like a trans flag hanging from the pulpit.
Sure. Among other things, like women in clergy and things that are just obviously anti-biblical.
And I think that's one good way to screen a church. If they have women in the pulpit, don't go.
Oh, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Like the things that I think are much harder for guys are listening carefully to the message that is put out there, right? Like we went ahead and left a congregation because there was female leadership. Like at first it wasn't obvious to us. Like we were visiting and we had visited for a month and a half and everything seemed to be on the up and up. The message was pretty clear and pretty biblical. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, let's go ahead and give appreciation to our elders. And there were 2 women that walked up in addition to 6 other men. And I'm like, what is going on here? Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3 are very clear on what constitutes an elder. And so that was enough. I was like, nope, we're out. That isn't happening anymore.
Great screening question for clergy. Tell me your thoughts about 1 Timothy.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me about 1 Timothy 3.
Yes. And what you think about it. Is it real, not real? I mean, for that matter, you can ask them about the Pauline epistles because they're full of this material. And the churches have decided to ignore it and go a different route, all about the money.
Right. Or you can ask them, should the wife submit to the husband? Not mutually, one way. And if they go ahead and give you anything else but yes, and give you the references, that's enough for you to be like, nah, we're good.
Yeah, if they say, well, it depends.
That's enough. That's enough.
There you go. You can stop right there.
Done. Done. That's it. Right? Because it is so clear in the entirety of Scripture what the divine order is. Right? So Ephesians 5, they love to go ahead and point at that. Husband or wife is to submit to her husband. Colossians 3, wife is to submit to her husband. 1 Peter 3, wife is to submit to her husband, regardless if he's a believer or not. So it even takes that performance element out of that contention.
Right.
Because it's a unilateral command. It is, she will do this. That is the divine command. It's very straightforward.
There is one story after another in the Bible over and over again showing you what happens when you don't do that.
Right. And then the last one that I like to point out is Titus 2, where it gives instructions to older women to instruct younger women in how they should be. And it says that they should obey their husbands, be workers at home, and things of that nature. And then it gives you the reason at the end of the verse. At the end of the verse, it says, so that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Because when the women are acting in rebellion and not obeying their husbands, it shows everybody outside of the church that there is no authority, that it's all wild, it's all willy-nilly. We can just do whatever we want. That's what rebellion is.
And that's where we are today. And
right.
It looks terrible on us.
And if we just went ahead and went back to scripture and read it for what it is, we would be so much better off.
Please pass that along to the modern church. They need to hear it.
I do multiple times a week. That's basically what my channel's been about for the last couple of months, is just going against gynocentrism in the church.
It's a worthwhile cause. That's why I enjoy coming to talk to you, Mike.
Absolutely. So I have some references for Paul down in the description. If you want to go ahead and hear more from Paul Elam, he's got a lot of great things going on. You can go ahead and check out his YouTube channel, link below, as well as his X account, the XY Crew. If you need a brotherhood of men to go ahead and speak with, he's got it ready to go. Also, he's got this podcast that's getting ready to come up. What's the title of it again, Paul?
Repairing the Manosphere.
Awesome. There we go. Hopefully, Paul will go ahead and invite me on as a guest at some point.
You can count on it. You can count on it.
Do you have any closing remarks for the gentleman here in the chat?
No, just that I want to thank the guys again that supported your channel. You know, this is a lot of work. It really is. You have to really love what you're doing, and it really means something. Even small donations, they actually mean something to the people doing the work. So kudos to you guys, and come check out my channel. Come check out my Substack. Come check out XY Crew. It's like he said, if you're struggling with anything, with any of this stuff, we got a group of men that can talk about it. And there is a age range in there. We got them from early 20s up until their late 70s. A lot of wisdom in there, a lot of experience, and a lot of guys that actually care about what's happening in each other's lives.
Awesome. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out again to Mountain Man Tops, my first super chat ever. Thank you so much, Mountain Man Tops. To, of course, Michael saying, when it rains, it pours. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Don DeMarco. At some point, I've got a stream deck, and I'm going to go ahead and get that Don DeMarco button and put it on there. That's going to be great.
I've got one of those too, and maybe within the next couple of weeks, I'll learn how to use it.
Awesome. Hey, you and me both, brother. We'll figure it out together. So if you want to go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button on your way out, I really would appreciate it. I just encourage you, gentlemen, to go ahead and work hard, love strong, and make sure that you're doing things for you, and understand that you have responsibility for yourself and the people around you, primarily to you. But other people around you could use your help too, because you, being the strong man that you will be a threat to the enemies that we have to us and an asset to your brothers beside us. The forge is ready. It's time to get to work, gentlemen.